Welcome back for the balance of the hour. It'll be all about the midterms, and by now you know the headlines. Democrats, they took control of the House. Republicans, they've grown their Senate majority, and last night we covered that and a lot more. We were all over the region, let alone country, and we were covering House, Senate, gubernatorial races with a team of reporters and expert analysis. Well, tonight we're going to recap and also take a look ahead. We'll take a look at the winners, the losers, the new political landscape, and locally as well as in D.C., we'll ask where we go from here. But first, President Trump holding a news conference today that has to be described as bizarre, discussing last night's result. And he started by talking about who else but himself.
We saw the candidates that I supported achieve tremendous success last night. As an example of the 11 candidates we campaigned with during the last week, 9 won last night. This vigorous campaigning stopped the blue wave that they talked about. I don't know if there ever was such a thing, but could have been. If we didn't do the campaigning, probably there could have been. And the history really will see what a good job we did in the final couple of weeks.
So he did a great job, according to him. Then he went after the Democrats over his favorite topic, immigration.
They're very weak on crime because they have often suggested, members and people within the Democrat Party at a high level have suggested getting rid of ICE, getting rid of law enforcement. That's not going to happen, okay? We want to be strong on the borders. We want to be strong on law enforcement, and I want to cherish ICE because ICE does a fantastic job.
A few minutes later, though, he spoke about how well he'll actually work with the Democrats.
I'll be honest. I thought it was a very close to complete victory. When you look at it from the standpoint of negotiation, when you look at it from the standpoint of deal making, because it's all about deal making, again, if we had the majority and we had 1 or 2 or 3 votes to play with, we would have been at a standstill. I really believe that we have a chance to get along very well with the Democrats. And if that's the case, we can do a tremendous amount of legislation and get it approved by both parties.
Yes, bipartisanship will reign supreme. You just hold your breath on that one. Now, it would not be a press conference with our president without him sparring with his favorite punching bag. That would be the media.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question. Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I
was
going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President.
That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation? Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Excuse me, would you please sit down? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that the House of Representatives
very hostile.
has split.
It's such a hostile media. It's so sad. You ask me about. No, you rudely interrupted him. You rudely interrupted him.
Okay, believe it or not, it got even worse from there.
On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying that the president.
That's such a racist
There
question.
are some people that say that now the Republican Party is seen as supporting white nationalists because of your rhetoric. What do you make of that?
I don't believe it. I don't know. Why do I have my highest poll numbers ever with African Americans? Why do I have among the highest poll numbers with African Americans? I mean, why do I have my highest poll numbers? That's such a racist question. Honestly, I mean, I know you have it written down and you're going to tell me. Let me tell you, it's a racist question.
And joining me now to take a look at all the ramifications of last night, including how the White House is reacting to the new political reality, ABC News political director Rick Klein. You know, Rick, it's interesting. To me, it was more of a split decision last night, but depending on, I guess, one's perspective, one side did better than expected or not. That all said, try and take us behind the walls at the White House. Would they have signed up last night for losing 30 seats in the House but keeping and growing the margin in the Senate? Or is the new reality of investigations and subpoena power in Democratic hands something that they really thought they could have avoided?
Losing either chamber of Congress is a terrible thing for any president. But they knew the realities going into election night. They were hoping against hope to draw, as one strategist said, that ultimate inside straight. They thought there was potentially a path, but truly they were resigned to what was happening. And once the returns came in, I think it became pretty obvious. And I think even in the president's last 10 days or so of travel, it became obvious that they saw the writing on the wall. They did what they could to preserve the Senate. And I think most Republican strategists, most White House strategists would say, if you're going to have either the House or the Senate's not a bad place to land. You're going to still get nominations approved if you want a cabinet shakeup. And as we learned just recently with Judge Kavanaugh, judges, including Supreme Court justices, they go through the Senate. So it's not an ideal situation for the White House, but I think they would rather lose the House and not the Senate versus the other way around.
Conversely, for Democrats, they needed to get a chamber, and they did yesterday. Would they have signed up for flipping 30 seats, or do they think the wave was going to be bigger?
I think given where the map was, there was almost no way for them to win the Senate. And they knew this 2 years ago. When you first started to realize you're going to run with an incumbent Republican president in 10 states where you were defending your own Democrat that President Trump had just carried that state. You're just playing so much defense. They had so few opportunities for offense. Truly, the whole battlefield for them to potentially win seats was limited to Arizona, Nevada, and then Tennessee and Texas. That's how rough a map it was. Then they had to play defense virtually everywhere. So look, I think the reality was always that the Democrats were going to lose ground in the Senate. I think their hopes got up with the Beto O'Rourke phenomena of a couple weeks ago in particular that said, wait a second, maybe there's a path here, maybe there's a wave. Realistically speaking, though, I think the president is just too popular in certain pockets of the country in those big red states for the wave to have done any significant damage this year.
And speaking of the president and his party, and I mean that literally, it seems that it's his party right now. He can make the argument, he certainly did in that bizarro press conference, that wherever I went, basically campaigning strictly for senators, I helped close the deal, if not won the race. And conversely, where they didn't want my help, they're going to be looking for work come November. To that end, is it complete now, the transformation of the GOP, that anyone thinking to stand up to the president looked at what happened last night, Rick, and says, you know, for better or worse, we're going to have to follow this guy wherever he goes?
Pretty close. Look, the fact is that his analysis is not correct. There were plenty of Republicans who cozied up to him and lost anyway. There were some who distanced themselves and ended up winning their seats. Not a lot, but it definitely happened. And I think the president didn't talk about the results that he didn't get the way that he wanted. A bunch of candidates, including some in the Midwest of Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, places that he did very well 2 years ago, where he worked for the Senate candidate, and they didn't win, even though they were very much in the Trump mold. That said, he was successful in a range of places, notably in Florida, notably in the Ohio governor's race, where people were a little bit closer to his point of view. And I think he is responsible in large part for getting out the vote in places like Missouri, like North Dakota, where the Democrats ended up losing incumbents. And I think even before that happened, it was pretty clear that the Republican Party is the Trump Party is the Republican Party. And I think last night confirms it to my mind, that it closes off, to my mind, any chance of someone potentially primarying President Trump. I don't see oxygen for that, and I think it just confirms a transformation that was well in place long before this.
How do you, and I know as I ask this question, there's no possible way, nor would I ask you to, because you seem like a nice person, to try and get in the mind of the president, but nonetheless, Rick, watching how this played out today, he all but threw a bouquet to Nancy Pelosi. He says, let's make a deal. And then conversely, in the same voice, as we just showed, he condemned the Democratic Party as basically the enemy of the people in so many words. Do you have any idea, will he be motivated to try and strike deals here? Or now does he have a boogeyman that isn't all Republican control and he can blame them for obstruction? Where's the White House's head on this, especially now that the Democrats have subpoena power?
Because it's the Trump White House, the head will be wherever Trump's head is, and that's going to mean different places on different days of the week, maybe within different hours or different tweets that go out in the same hour. President Trump likes to win, and sometimes wins are going to mean legislative wins. I could see him working in discrete areas with the Democrats in the Senate and the House both, and to try to put some things together, maybe on infrastructure, maybe on sentencing reform and criminal justice, maybe even on health care, depending on where the president's mood shifts on a particular day. But he is going to be playing a lot more defense than offense, and I think the White House is going to have to reorient itself to a new reality. That reality is that Democrats have control of a lever of government. That's a new day in Washington. It is a new reality for President Trump. He faces some difficulties that he just simply hasn't had to because Republicans have been in control of Washington in his time here.
Rick, at the end of the day, you hook them up to a truth machine. Which party think they did better last night? All expectations and everything involved. Which party is in a better position than they expected when Tuesday started?
Democrats taking a chamber of Congress is a big deal, period, end of sentence. They would have liked to do a lot better. They're very disappointed in the Senate results. They're disappointed they didn't do better in the gubernatorial results. Florida in particular, I think, stings, as does Georgia, although that could still go into a runoff. I think, though, Democrats, if you told them at the beginning of the election cycle, you're going to get the House but not the Senate, you're going to pick up some governorships, and you live to fight another day, I think they would have taken that gamble the day after Election Day 2 years ago.
Rick Klein, as always, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
All right, coming up next, a lot of upsets and also big changes in the political map in our viewing area. We're going to take a look at the wins, the losses, and the surprises.